America. My name is Osei-Frimpong. I come to you live every Monday and Thursday. Monday, I try to do more of a relationship show. Thursday, I do more of a politics show. Today, we're going to talk about interracial relationships and that Katt Williams interview he did with Shannon Sharpe that's been getting so much buzz. First, this began with one amusing bit I noticed about the Katt Williams interview was that he was only scared of one group in America. And it was a group that took out Jonathan Majors, white women, right? So real power isn't really the power you can summon in a punch to punch someone. Real power is the power you can summon by a phone call, by sicking other people on people, right? So, Arnold Schwarzenegger against an army, it doesn't matter. The person who's the most powerful in that situation is the person who commands the army. So the power of command and the power to be able to kind of not point and shoot a gun necessarily, but point and shoot whole people onto other people, that's real power in America. And there's one group that has that kind of power in a way that's a little bit uncontested or unchecked or not quite publicly accountable, and that's white women, even white men. And, we're really good at pooping on white men, and I poop on enough white men. They are a little bit more publicly accountable for their violence in the way that white women are not. They just kind of point, and then someone goes away, and then they kind of wipe their hands as if they didn't do anything of it. So, like, white women are terrifying. Jonathan Major's grandkids now have to get a job because he's not going to get that Marvel money. And you have to understand what that means. And you have to understand what vulnerability looks like. Especially in a modern world where power is divided and violence is divided. It's not just about strength of arms. It's about institutions and who really has the most institutional power, who can point and say whatever they want to say. And your life is not quite the same. It's not just white men. And Katt Williams said, and he talked a lot of crap on that interview with Shannon Sharpe. So he's not a scared guy, but there was one demographic he was like, they're terrifying. And it's funny, and he didn't take it the anti-Semitic way. He went to white women. And so I said that, and I find that very amusing because I think a lot of our racial and labor politics has to do with the fact that we have a hard time holding white women accountable. So the whites load all of their kind of aggressive ideas into white womanhood while putting out white men to take a lot of flack. And, so there's a reason why we haven't progressed so much in labor or racial justice in the last 40 years, but yet feminism's kind of been doing all right. And so I think it's a strategy. You have to understand kind of the racial order in the United States, at least, as a complex, and it's not just the men doing it. In fact, I don't like a lot of white guys do things only because their wives really want them to. If kitchens and bathrooms sell houses, kitchens, bathrooms, and school districts sell houses, when you talk about neighborhood segregation, are you sure that's really men making that decision? It's a good house for the family. I know no small number of white guys who wanted to live in the city, but their wife wanted to live in the suburbs because that's what she was told to do. And so, so there's an unaccountable block, white women. So I started talking like this on Facebook, and people said, well, Iami, your wife is white. You can't talk like this. And I get this quite a bit. Well, I get this every few months when someone thinks they got me because I have a white wife. So I'm just going to lay it out plain right now about how this works. One, I believe in integration. I believe in integration. I think we are one nation. And the problem is we didn't really integrate power. We didn't really integrate power, even with something like Brown versus Board of Education. They didn't really get to integrate power. They integrated the most vulnerable people. They didn't integrate school boards. They didn't integrate administration insofar as like white people and black people sharing power and white people under black people in a great many schools. We didn't do that. We integrated the students, the most vulnerable people. We should have integrated school boards, should have integrated administrations, should have integrated textbook companies and hashed that out. But instead, we just pretty much, it was a surrender to the whites. We just gave them our kids. So it was a recipe for assimilation, which is not the same as a just integration. And people say like, well, we could have kept segregation if black people over here and white people over here. But then how does that work at the level of governance, at the level of budgets? If you want clean water, you're going to have to have black people fully integrated at all levels of governance. And I mean, right now the southern state legislature is the Klan, and you got these little black towns. All of them, not all of them, a great many of them don't have the public infrastructure they need because the state legislature starves little black towns, right? So this idea of separate but equal in the United States isn't going to work if we're going to be a democracy insofar as you need representation and power, real power at the state level. So I believe in integration. I just don't think black people should integrate on their knees. Instead, they should integrate standing up. And the deal that was given to us in the 60s was black people integrate except on your knees, and we're not going to actually integrate capital. We're a capitalist country, but black people don't own anything, so we don't have any real power. Right? So I talk like this, and people say, but you can't talk like this. You married a white woman. And I said, yeah, I did. I don't understand why that's big of a deal. But mostly because I think people have a superficial understanding of race. Well, honestly, a lot of black women are just mad because their lives aren't very good. So they think their lives would be better if somehow guys like me would have married them. I don't, that's on them. We're going to go into that a little bit later, just a little bit, because I always try to blame black people last. But now let me just tell you a little bit how race works, because you get a lot confused. You have a lot confused. Black people, especially even descendants of slaves, are not an ethnic group proper. There's no spiritual unity. like our grandfathers and great-great-great-grandfathers were like brought over here and we have external determination imposed upon us. That's not the same as, say, like Orthodox Jews who have been ordained by God as the chosen people, or Mormons, or even Catholics, or someone who has a positive spiritual identity that's tied to their particular ethnicity. No, we're like people who've been thrown in prison together. The situation sucks, but we're all here, like there's nothing of our will that made us who we are, who made our situation as it is, right? So my dad's from Ghana, but my mom's from South Carolina, and yeah. So insofar as black people are a people, it's a people that's been externally determined by the pathologies of the whites and the problems of America. It's not a spiritual unity proper. So it's a very thin race, as in terms of skin color, even lineage, is a very thin unity because there is no positive spiritual content. And spiritual content is you can define it just as culture and cultural institutions that aren't externally determined, that are positively determined. There is no black organizations in America that haven't been filtered and made black, filtered and allowed for by the whites. And that's not, you can't say the same thing about like Orthodox Jews or anything like that, right? So what black people have in common with other black people, besides black skin, is having to deal with the whites. But what that means radically different things to radically different people. And I want to put a quick caveat on that. The NOI, I have there's a lot of bad things to be said about the NOI, but this is something that the NOI actually kind of got right. They tried to insert actual spiritual content in what it meant to be black, and not just it just being external determination. They actually, like, when I say spiritual content, that means you know who you are, you know what that means, you know the path forward. There are institutions for you to work with that. I think the NOI actually got that part of the problem right. They have a myth and a way to make sense of yourself and your institutional relationships with other black people through the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. That's what something like the NOI actually got right. But just being black in America, that doesn't give you spiritual content. with and a relationship with other black people. Or this, so like black people don't have all the same values, except like, what are we going to do with the whites? But that's not a positive content. That we might have all the same problems, but that problem means different things to different people. Some people take the house Negro approach. Some people take the respectability politics approach. Like, there is no unified approach of what this means that we are in the situation that we are in. And in the absence of that, like even ADOS as a race is a very, very thin tie. This is why, for example, there would be a spiritual tie if everyone had the same meaning, if everyone understood what it meant to be black in the United States in the same way. But honestly, there are white people who understand what it means to be black in the United States and what the path is to justice that I agree with a lot of them, more than I agree with, a lot of black people who kind of organize their life around survival, and survival is not the same thing as freedom. So, if I run into a white person who actually like is serious about like, all right, so if we're serious about black people getting free, we got to get serious about reparations. We got to get serious about securing them land. We got to get serious about securing them like real assets and control in their communities. So if a white person talks like that, that's 18 times more useful than a black person who, is black and but that means, well, if I'm just nice enough to the white people, I can kind of sneak in under the radar. And if I'm just nice enough, maybe I can get money from one of the rich whites and be a donor for my nonprofit. Like, those black people are useless in terms of the struggle. Like, so we are both the same race, but not really the same ethnicity, because what our race means is so radically different. Because being black in the United States is an external determination. It's been imposed upon us, and we all might have the same problem, but if we all have a different understanding of what that problem means, then that's not a recipe. And I say this because if I had married someone who was black, but had a different understanding about what being black means, and there are a lot of people with a different understanding about what being black means than I do, that would have ended in a divorce. That would have been in a problem. That would have been a bigger problem for raising our black kids than me marrying a white woman who actually kind of gets the problem. So I've seen a lot of black couples split because they have different understandings about what being black and being responsible and making your way and securing freedom in the United States means. And especially that's realized in the different ways that they think about raising their kids. Often, I'll be honest, it's women who want to raise their kids, well, be safe and be nice and, be polite and respectability. And then the guys will be like, no, you got to teach your kid to fight. And that breaks up whole marriages. Among black people. So the unity isn't necessarily skin color, it's what skin color means. Find someone who understands, who agrees with you on what the skin color means. So, and that's a real unity. I hope that was clear. A lot of people get this confused, and I think that's too bad. So now that we've I just want to make sure that I'm going on. Can you give me something in chat to tell me that this is going? Because I'm not really convinced that it is. Yes. All right. So I am going. All right, so now that I've settled that, let's talk about interracial relationships. So there's this idea, well, Army, you could have found a black woman, and instead you went with a white woman. That's your choice. I don't understand. What do you think, this is Love Jones? And I was just saying no to to Nia. I was in Chicago working retail, and the future Mrs. Osei-Frimpong walked into my bookstore. We started chatting, and she wanted a book that I had read, and and it went from there. And on our first date, which I took her to a diner, I spent all of $25. And then I told her, and I said it with my full chest. So I don't have any money because I just bought a bicycle, I bicycle a lot. And I just bought a bicycle. Didn't know I was going to meet my future wife at at my next shift. And so I was like, all right, so I don't have any money. I just bought a bicycle. And so if we can go out, because I had a great time, but it's going to have to wait for 2 weeks. And she was cool with that. A lot of people wouldn't have been. And you have to understand, I'm a little bit particular. I'm bookish. I don't care about money. 15 years ago, I was bookish. Don't care about money. I am athletic, and I knew I wanted an athletic life. That means athletic kids. So for example, my 3 kids and I and my wife, we all, when the kids got home today, we ran 3 miles. Around the neighborhood because we do exercise every day. And let's be honest, and I'm going to need a wife who can keep up because, with 3 kids, one has to go with one kid and one has to go with the other. And my 6-year-old, my 6-year-old runs a 7-minute mile, a little bit faster than that. So you need to be able to move if you're going to stay with me. So I need an athletic woman who's smart, interesting, interested so I don't get bored, and is cool with my unorthodox way of raising children. All of that. So those were my standards. And I have dated a few black women like that, but you know what? It didn't work out because they got better offers, which I don't respect them for. So I'm not really. I do respect them. I don't fault them for. Well, they got offers they think were better. I don't know. 20 years down the line, if they think, I probably should have stayed with Iremy. I don't know if they think that. But we're talking about a very, 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 very small number of black women who both are going to be lifetime athletes, cool with me being bookish, cool with me being broke and not really not caring about money. Not just say, I don't care about money. No, I don't care. I just need enough to raise my kids. And by the way, if you support what I'm doing, go ahead and go to www.funkyacademic.com, kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month. And I need to be able to read books, and I need to create the kind of cultural products that I need to do, and go to school, and is cool with me talking the way I talk to about whites and women and the ideas that I get, right? So I need someone who's cool with a broke black guy who looks so-so, but is athletic with a big mouth. So those black women do exist, but there aren't a lot of them. But if you go to like a half marathon and throw a rock, that rock will hit like 16 white women of that kind, right? So, yeah, like just by numbers. And if you go to a half marathon, what you're not going to see is a lot of like single black women. That's just how it is. And yeah, I'm not, it's just a number games, and they weren't coming into my bookstore like that. And so let's stop pretending that I had an infinite amount of choice and I could have just picked someone who, like, it would have worked out, because a lot of black guys get divorced. They think, well, it'll just work out with this woman, and it turns out that they get divorced. So I'm in an intact family. My kids are black. My wife is white. I get to say, and she loves me for, not just in spite of, but kind of because of the quality of my mind, and the fact that I'm a non-obvious, pretty cool guy. That's actually that's a good thing. And in this world where a lot of black guys like me, I'm very divorceable. And so in this world where there are a lot of black guys like me who actually have divorced and only see their kids on 3 days a week, which I think is a form of child abuse. I'll put it out there. I think that like I eked out like a pretty good situation. My family life is dope. My family life is dope. And if you think that makes me anti-black, I don't. That's on you. I think the respectability politics people. I think Barack and Michelle Obama are more anti-black. That's a black couple. Than say like Fanon or Frederick Douglass or I don't want to put myself with them, but like yeah, I so you're gonna have to go with that. And Umar with his baby mamas, like Umar's got like kids with multiple other women, like all of that I think is bad. And I think black families are very important. I think families are very important, and I think black families were targeted. Well, first of all, the black culture is targeted, and culture is what tells you how to, think about family, think about somewhat gender, think about jobs, think about all of that thing. But black culture is targeted, and in the wreckage that is black culture, like black family, like has been destroyed by liberalism. like black fathers, nobody knows what they're for, and they're not. Nobody's honest about it, and that's, I think, that's unfortunate. My kids know. And it's funny, as a dad of 3 kids, I really do look back at the stories people told, especially in the 80s and 90s, told women. And it's just a normalized culture of child abuse. We thought that fathers only existed. They were telling black women that fathers only existed for money. And that might work a little bit in the white culture because, white guys have money, but then when black guys don't have money, they were just tossed out. They were just disposable, left and right. If the only reason you married a black guy married a guy was for money, not to be like the father of your children, then when the money ran out, then the guy just seems like an extraneous Negro. So, in the 80s and 90s, black guys were just tossed out. Just because. And, I don't blame black women for doing that so much as like the culture was destroyed. And black ADOS culture like was in a wreckage. And in the wreckage, the market took up the vacuum. And then markets tell you just do what you want when you want to, because you want to. And then marriage with a market mentality, when you think it's just a business, it's unfortunate. And I think normalizes a culture of child abuse. So what have you learned? You've learned that race is a shallow form of unity because you need an understanding of what that race means. And insofar as black people in the United States just happen to be black, and that has put them at a disadvantage in terms of both family and culture and all of these other and resources and all of these other important goods, they are not unified. And they don't have the conditions for unity. Conditions take money. Conditions take money. So to sustain, and cultural infrastructure takes money to sustain. So there's no black voice. And the black voice we think is the black voice is a black voice that half of them are plants. Kevin Hart, he's a plant. And I think this is another thing Katt Williams said. Kevin Hart is a plant. He was picked to be the kind of Negro who would do the kinds of things that someone like Dave Chappelle wouldn't do. And because remember, he wasn't funny before he got all of these movie deals and he was in Soul Plane and all that stuff before he was actually particularly funny. he had Soul Plane was a $16 million movie. How do you head that up? I'll tell you how. Judd Apatow, Dame Dash will take some credit, but really it's Judd Apatow who said, I like this little Negro. The only one who said, I like this guy. And that's how that's how we all know who Kevin Hart is. Judd Apatow made him and Dame Dash said, okay. And so if Kevin Hart's not an industry plant, he kind of even Tyler Perry, I have more respect for Tyler Perry because Tyler Perry grew an audience and it was theater and all that stuff and then took it to Hollywood. Kevin Hart was like a pick-me who would do whatever. He was known for doing whatever Universal told him to do, kind of like Terry Crews a little bit, I suspect. And that's how he kept getting on. And that's fine for him, but like that's not particularly fine for us. So black people don't even pick the black faces who help black people understand what it is to be black. Black people don't pick that, which I think is a bigger problem, right? So, and you can throw all of these cliches, but cliches won't make black people, like, won't secure reparations. Like, you need more people telling other people and telling white people and telling everybody that black people won't be free until they are made whole, which is both materially and institutionally. So, you know, like, and I think you need less penis policing, because that's not going to actually secure reparations. And there's like, well, if all black people just married each other, well, you know what would happen? What we would have right now, except probably more divorces. Like more divorces, because everyone's broke and they don't control their own ideas. So they come in with all these ideas about what marriage is supposed to look like because they get them from the whites. And then when it doesn't work out that way, you know, the whites also say, you know, just leave if you want to leave. And so, like, we haven't figured it out. So do you want guys like me talking, my white spouse, intact family, saying that black people need intact families? Or do you want guys like Umar talking, or even like Mark Lamont Hill with their baby mamas and like all of that drama? Like, that's the problem. That's the problem. Like, we don't have cultural control. And the people who do have cultural control don't really have a vested interest in every black person having like assets, like every single. And that's not going to happen unless there's a federal program. Nobody wants to hear that. People want to say like, well, if we just all come together. No, poor people coming together with other poor people and nobody has a culture that's not gonna be how we win as a community. That's just how you pull together liabilities and you pull together like bad habits. Right. So thank you for your time. I hope I answered questions. Let me look real quickly at the chat. Someone says universal basic income. No, because here's the deal. You don't want everybody to have money. You need black people to have money. So, and everybody else, because money only makes sense in terms of other people's money, of other money. So you need black people to have money, and everybody else stay the same. So we need reparations, not universal basic income. And I don't want black people to be basic. I want them to actually have power to do things and make moves. And you need to be able to do things, and that's not just be basic and live. I'm tired of black people looking for survival and calling survival a win, because there's a difference between survival and actual self-determination, and we need to be shooting for self-determination, nothing basic. No, we need like real assets dispersed throughout the community, and so that they can sustain their own families and you know, black people win. And people be like, well, all the money you make, IME, that's just going to go to, you know, the whites when you die. What money, man? Like, where do you think, like, I'm not some billionaire who's going to leave. Like, the most important thing I'm giving is what I'm giving to you. And this is the same thing I'm giving to my kids. And let's be honest, if I married a black woman, who's to say that my kids, if I give them the same kind of culture that you know I'm giving my kids, aren't going to marry white people? So there is no guarantee, except if you really want black people to marry black people, you secure the livelihoods of black people. Like, I don't want. It's funny because someone said, you know, don't date anyone who doesn't have a daddy. Don't date anyone who didn't grow up with a dad. And as a guy who didn't grow up with a dad, first time I heard that, I was like, oh. But now I think about it, now that I'm a dad, I don't really want my kids dating anyone who didn't grow up with a dad. dad because I had problems. I had problems that are tied to not growing up with a dad. So it would have been easier on everyone who I dated if I had had a dad. And now with my kids, I want my kids to date people who have had daddies. And that's that. Both my son and my daughter. I don't want them to date people who, like me, didn't grow up with a dad. And it's funny because both my wife and I come from broken homes, and we survived. Like, not just survived, we like intentionally made that not happen here. Like, it had to be. It had to. It's not something that happens by accident. Like, we were like, all right, so we're not divorced until we just got to figure out how we're going to do everything, and we did, but. Yeah, no, that's the kind of cycle I like breaking. Like the fact that my wife came from a broken home, I came from a broken home, and our home is the exact opposite. Our kids' lives are almost unrecognizable relative to both of ours, and that's kind of how it should be. So, thank you for your time. And if you appreciate what I'm doing, and I might be saving you both a divorce and rehab for your kids, because if you're a liberal parent, you're just screwing up your kids. Go over to www.funkyacademic.com and kick in $5, $15, or $50 a month, and I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Remember, integration's good. Just don't integrate on your knees. And that's what the whites will want. They'll want you to integrate on your knees. You got to say, no. No. Integration's good. We will share power, and I will have my fair share of power. And that means when it's time for you to sit down and shut up and take your medicine, you're going to sit down and shut up. And you got to be able, and if you're not willing to say that to a white woman, then it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And that takes practice. They'll start crying. You say, shut up. And you got to be able to say it in public. Because if you're not willing to say that, they'll use their tears and their feelings and I try to be a good person, and it's my husband who's the bad one. I'm the good one. No, they'll use all of that nonsense to distract from the struggle, which is extracting their wealth and public power. Right? So, integration's good because we need the stuff, and we don't want second-rate stuff. I want clean water, not lead water. And, segregation leads to leaded water. Black people in a black town, all the water is poison, right? So integration's good, but we got to integrate power. Don't integrate on your knees. Don't confuse integration with segregation. We can integrate as Americans who need black people to help white people fix America, because left on their own, they're bad at Americaning. They have an America that's an internal colony. So integration's good, but integration not on your knees. Integration standing up. Integration with your chest out. Integration that unifies self-determination with the black struggle. And I'm a little dubious about dick policing, because if you think the problem is interracial marriage and not the casualness with which we discard fathers, or the casual assumption, I don't know. Yeah, there are a lot of problems with people who prioritize interracial marriage. I have a problem with skinny parents with fat kids, and I say this because I think it's another form of child abuse. Skinny parents with fat kids, I think that's a problem, and that we need to look. If the person is political, every time I see skinny parents with fat kids, I'm like, you're just bad at parenting. You're just bad at parenting because you're a skinny parent with fat kids. And now your kid's going to have to deal with weight and all the issues that come with that because you didn't feel like parenting. You didn't attend to policing what kind of food got into the house and what they thought of food and their relationship with food. And now you are a skinny parent with fat kids. Fat parents with fat kids, I'm like, well, maybe it's genetic, maybe. But, they don't eat like I did. There's another thing my dad did that my dad policed what went into the house. So I have a very healthy understanding of food in a way that apparently a lot of other parents didn't. yeah, so yeah, that's all I have to say about that issue. I will talk to you guys on